Hello, this is Ted Gladden coming to you as the host of Bio-Techne Mentorcast, a podcast series we are creating to provide Bio-Techne employees an opportunity to learn from the experiences of our corporate leadership team. It's also a chance to get to know them a bit more. We hope you enjoy the podcast. This is episode 5 with Kevin Smyth. I'd like to welcome next to our podcast is Kevin Smyth. He is our Vice President of Digital Solutions. So welcome to Mentorcast, Kevin.
Thank you.
And out of all the corporate leadership team members, you're one of the newest. And so I don't know much about you. So I'd like to start off in a place to kind of give you an opportunity to introduce yourself a little bit. And I think a great place to start is, where did you get your education? Where'd you go to school?
Yeah. So how far back do you want me to go, Ted? Do you want me to go to grammar school?
Well, it depends if it was like, you had grammar school in China somewhere very exotically.
It wasn't quite that exotic.
Okay.
It was a small town in Southern California.
Okay. Well, why don't we start somewhere?
Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah. So I received my bachelor's degree from Cal Poly in Pomona in mechanical engineering. And then I have a master's in mechanical engineering as well from Cal State Fullerton.
Oh, okay. And I notice you have a BYU shirt on right now. Any association with that?
My, fourth son is going there. Well, actually, he's on a mission right now, but he was going there. And my oldest went to BYU in Idaho. So,
oh, great.
Yeah, I got a free shirt and I'm wearing it.
There you go. Well, so after you went through all this schooling, obviously I'm sure you had a lengthy career of all these other things before coming to us. Kind of give us a nice little review of some of your career highlights until you reached us.
Oh, how much time do you have?
Well,
well, so as I just stated, I'm a mechanical engineer by schooling in the early years. So I spent about a decade in California, where I grew up, working as a mechanical engineer for a construction and products related business. So we manufactured anything from high performance coatings, so a lot to do with chemistry, through concrete pipe that were used, for fun things like sewage, to the area I spent most of my time in, which was oil and gas transportation, which was in high performance coatings and fiberglass piping. Okay. And after about a decade doing that, I decided one of the things that I love is change. So in that kind of field, it was a little static at the time, and I decided I'm going to try something really exciting. I'm going to pick up my family and move them from California to the glorious state of Missouri in the middle of the country and introduce them to heat and humidity along with cold. And at the same time, flip my career to work for Ernst & Young as a management consultant. So I sent, I know, it's interesting, huh?
Yeah, if you can't tell, I actually crinkled my nose and gave Kevin an unusual look, because eventually we got to get to a place where you're head of IT in a lot of respects. So where does IT come involved here? Yeah,
so I guess I should rewind a little bit. In my career at my first company, I became the in situ IT department just out of need. So while I was working on the engineering tasks and designing equipment to manufacture these pipes and new products and all the fun stuff, we were in this transition stage, in the late 80s, early 90s, of going away from these things called mini computers and mainframes to PCs. And I was one of the first people to start doing CAD on a PC. So it was kind of successful, and we decided to buy another one and another one. So we had to figure out, how do we network these computers together so we can print, and then network these computers together so we can access files and all this fun stuff. So, next thing I know, I'm in the office on the weekend running these cables for a thing called ArcNet, which doesn't exist anymore. It's Ethernet now these days. So kind of taught myself, and then, like I said, decided I'm going to do something exciting and different. And Ernst & Young came knocking and said, hey, we've got all this demand for people that have manufacturing experience to come in and help us. So I moved to Kansas City and never stepped foot in another manufacturing facility while I worked for them. I went to telco in media and finance, and spent a lot of time helping businesses transform their processes enabled by, good business process and technology. So that was kind of the beginning of the second portion of my career. And after a number of years working for them, I went to work for a healthcare company. And I spent just a short year there traveling every single day the year I was there. So that was a little rough, spending that much time away from the family, but good experience getting out in front of physicians and nurses as we implemented our software, which is essentially kind of like an ERP, like think AX or Sage or what we use around here, but in the healthcare system. And at that time, I was recruited back into what was then Capgemini Ernst & Young after that acquisition, and spent another long period of time working on transformational projects for a big company people might know, Sprint. So I was in one of their supply facilities working there. And then Cerner came back, which was that other place I was at, and said, hey, can you come help us run our applications group? So I said, sure. I've never officially been in an IT job. Let's try that out. So I went back and managed that team. And about a year and a half into that, I was promoted to CIO. And I spent a number of years, three and a half years as CIO there, until I was recruited to come to the great state of Minnesota. So I'm slowly working myself north and east. So I might end up in Iceland or something at some point.
I was going to ask, is that a desire to move more north and east?
But I do like the cool weather, I have to say. So then at my last company, I spent there a number of years working in marketing and IT organizations, coming up with different ways to kind of transform information and this whole digital age into new exciting solutions and, efficiencies and revenue and all that kind of fun stuff. So, I guess, engineering, IT, eclectic. Marketing, it's a lot of fun.
Well, I think, and you mentioned something in the very beginning about you enjoyed change.
Yes.
And then it kind of is a good segue into my first question that I've asked all of our guests, which is, do you have a new belief or behavior or habit that you had just recently adopted that has most positively impacted your life?
So I take it by this, you don't believe in the saying you can't teach old dogs new tricks? Is that
No. I think old dogs can learn definitely new tricks.
I would say that balance or putting first things first is probably what I'm constantly working on, but what comes to mind, right? Something you're focused on recently. I've been focusing on it for a while, but it's definitely something that's in the forefront of my thoughts right now. We always have these thoughts about this desire to move fast and be more efficient. At least I do. But over the years, I've realized that the word grace can be used in a bunch of different contexts, and I think that there's a lot of room to give people around us space, if you will, right, to do things at the right pace and the right balance. And sometimes we can use that word on ourselves, right? Give ourselves a little bit of grace to, if you will, a little bit of room to put first things first. In other words, think about balance and prioritization.
So there's a level of patience that you've had to gain from all of this, you think?
Yeah, that's a good word, patience.
So the next question is about things that you enjoy about yourself. And so, for instance, what is something absurd that you enjoy about yourself or like about yourself?
So you're calling me absurd?
Well, I think
you're saying I like myself too. You're insinuating a lot.
I am insinuating quite a bit, but I think we're all very unique, and there's something that even if it's behind the layers that nobody gets to see, there's certainly something that makes you uniquely Kevin Smyth.
Yep. So we kind of hit on it already. Right? I like change. It's kind of unusual, actually, when you ask people. They say, "Oh, yeah, change is good," but the reality is, change is hard, and most people don't like it. I put myself at the center of a lot of change, certainly in my career. And part of my job is to be a change agent in a lot of places I've been. So that is a little unusual, I'd say. But I think, in reality, most people think that it's very odd that I like to change the oil in my own car.
Really?
I think I get a lot of comments about, what, you work on your own car? You change your own oil? Yeah, I not only change my own oil, I do everything on my car. And in fact, I love to work on cars. It's just kind of calming and satisfying to me. My dad, growing up, he was a diesel mechanic, so I've been working on cars since I was very young. I remember, in the garage helping him, and then, maybe in my 10 to 12 year range, going on to weekend jobs that he had and changing oil and the forklifts. and that kind of fun stuff.
So what's the most extensive car repair job that you've done by yourself?
Well,
that you're most proud of even?
When I was 16, I literally built an engine for my car from scratch on my own. I'd done enough with my dad, like helped him, that I went out on my own and built an engine for my 66 Mustang Fastback.
Nice.
So I wedged a 351 Cleveland in there, if that means anything to anyone out there. It was a lot of fun. So I continue to love to work on cars, and I try to teach my kids the same thing. And these days, with the advent of all the computers that are in cars, it's the positive and negative. You can look at it either way. I look at it as a positive because now I get to blend technology with something I love, cars. I love both of them, and now working on cars is about computers and the cars. So it's a bunch of fun.
Nice. One of the things that I remember when I first met you, you noticed that I'm a Star Wars fan because I had a coffee mug that has Yoda on it, which is one of my favorite characters. And one of the things that and yes, there it is. Kevin just showed me something that was on his keychain, and what was on his keychain was a little plastic Yoda. And I don't want to go too deep into why you have that because, who knows? Maybe a little bit we could. But it kind of leads into my next question of, do you have any purchases less than $100 that just mostly improved your life?
Well, I think it's a tie between Yoda, which I just showed you.
Okay. So maybe what you should also explain is, why do you have Yoda?
Yep, because you made it sound really mysterious. It's not that mysterious. I like Star Wars, and my daughter loves Star Wars, and she loves Yoda and Chewbacca and all the fun stuff. So I originally had bought that at Disney World with my daughter, and it got stolen with my key and a bunch of other stuff when I was in California a few months back. So so I was able to replace it, which is fantastic. But I don't know. I think that the purchase that I'm, kind of makes me the most happy is my driver. My golf club, the driver.
Oh,
now,
okay.
Real golfers may be saying, "Wait a minute, under $100." No, there's a story. So I won a putter in some competition about a year and a half ago, and a nice Scotty Cameron putter, blah blah blah, right? And I have a putter I've been playing with for 15 years. I'm not changing my putter. I'm not messing with that. And so anyway, I went to a store and tried to trade it in and found this driver, and it was in the used rack. And somehow I was able to trade in this putter for that driver, and I spent about $5. So technically, I tell people my driver is a $5 driver.
And so how far do you hit in an average?
I'd say average maybe 260. It's okay.
It's very good. Yeah. As long as it's straight, right?
It was 240 with my old driver, so it was a $5 well spent. Yeah.
Very nice. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say and why?
Billboards. That would mean cars are driving by?
Cars are driving by.
I would say it is called the fast lane for a reason.
I love it. ...
How's that?
I like it a lot. And you probably, now that you've lived in California and Missouri and now in Minnesota, probably realize it's one of the biggest complaints of living in the Minneapolis area, with people hanging out in the fast lanes going very slow.
Yeah. Well, maybe the billboard should say patience for me.
Maybe there should be a blend. Maybe it should be one of those electronic boards that can
That's right. It knows who's coming.
There you go. Do you enjoy reading?
I do somewhat. Yeah, I'm not a big book reader, but yeah, I read mostly business type books.
Okay. Have you ever given any books away for a gift?
I have.
Tell me about it.
I think the book that I probably have peddled the most is called Go Put Your Strengths to Work. It's over a decade old at this point, and the premise of the book is essentially figure out what you're good at and what you're not good at, and focus on the things that you're good at. So put your strengths to work, right? So if there's something that you're really good at, focus on getting even better at that, because when you multiply your skill with the enjoyment and passion that you have, you're going to do much, much better than focusing on something that you don't enjoy and you're not good at. So think of the analogy: if you're an engineer like me, you probably love math, you probably didn't like English. So when you brought your report card home, you had an A in math and a C in English, what would your parents say? Focus on English. You can do better. Well, my passion was in math. Why don't I get an A+ in math? That's what I'm going to do. This book kind of gives those analogies and goes into essentially figuring out how to focus on your passion, and you will benefit, and the people around you will benefit from it. And so if you ever hear me talking about red cards and green cards, I'm referring to this book.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Other than your little plastic Yoda and your driver, what is one of the most worthwhile investments you've ever made? And it doesn't have to be monetarily. It could be time. It could be multiple different things.
It's a hard one because, I had all the smart people ahead of me, and they took all the good ones, right? So Brenda took kids, and, Frank took the car idea.
Of course.
That's gone completely, right? And unfortunately, I've not made the kind of investments that Jerry has made, so I haven't quite got the story there. And I talked about my driver already, so... Okay. I have a good one.
Okay, go for it.
All right. So my wife and I were married about 28 plus years ago.
Okay.
And we went to Whistler for our honeymoon.
Nice.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Unfortunately, I've been there twice, and both times it was like iced out. So not great, but okay for your honeymoon. So at that time, we were living in Southern California, and we just made the weird decision to spend like $200 on these Sorel snow boots, which seemed like a really bad choice as a newlywed couple. We were still in college, and we lived in Southern California. What are you going to do with these boots, right? Really bad idea. But I have to tell you, 28 years later, living in Minnesota now, I still have those boots. So, and they rock. They still work. Anytime I have to shovel snows, I'm in those Sorels. So that's, if you do the math, that's like 50 cents a month over the past several decades. So that's
money well spent.
That's a pretty good investment. If you could only see the stupid grin on my face behind the podcast, I'm pretty happy about that.
Very nice, very nice. One of the things that you mentioned, I think when you first introduced yourself to the entire corporation, you had a short presentation, and I think I remember you saying that you are an adrenaline junkie.
Yes.
I recall.
You're talking about the leadership.
A little bit.
Yeah, the forum that I was with the company 7 days, and you asked me to present that one.
That's right.
Is that what you're talking about?
I think so. Okay, I think a little bit. And with being an adrenaline junkie, I assume, I think you had indicated that you enjoy water skiing, downhill skiing, just anything that gives you an adrenaline rush. And I think this kind of leads into the next question, because obviously there's probably times that you failed at what you were trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. What is your favorite failure?
Favorite and failure in the same
oxymoronic
sense. I know. I could talk about the time that I, got this lovely plate I have on my shoulder, but Frank already took the motorcycle crashing story, so I won't do that. Mm-hmm. I could talk about the time I broke my leg wakeboarding, but that's not very fun because I don't think it was favorite. I have a couple things in mind. One of them actually is another interesting story about patience. It was an epic failure.
Let's hear it.
But it is one of my favorites because, and I'll tell you why at the end, but so I have one of my sons, I can't remember which one at this point now, had a Honda Civic or something like that, and it was making this horrific rattling noise, and we couldn't quite pinpoint what the rattling was, but there seemed to be a pattern, like when it was only in gear, accelerating, and if you took your foot off the accelerator, it went away, put it in neutral, it went away, just sitting there, it went away, and we went around and around. So, I've already told you about my claim to being a mechanic, if you will. Mm-hmm, not really, as you'll learn in this story. Mm-hmm. So we did a lot of things. We went so far as to take the transmission out. We replaced the clutch because we thought it was a throwout bearing. We had the transmission rebuilt because we thought it was something in the transmission. Sure enough, there was something wrong with it, but it wasn't that bad. We did a lot. Timing belts, anything you can imagine, we did it, on a car that was probably a $500 car. But we were going to conquer this problem. So at the last end of this, I think the transmission's the last thing we did. Sure enough, we pull it out of the driveway, the rattle is back. And I can't believe this. What is going on? So we get it up on some ramps, and one of my other sons crawls under and he goes, "Hey, it's the heat shield." There's this little tiny piece of metal covering the exhaust from lighting bushes on fire, whatever reason it's there for. And it had one of the welds had broken loose, and we'd never pinpointed down. So I ripped that shield off. I have that in my office at home, and I've written on it, patience.
I love it.
Right? Because you spent all that time and effort and money going after what we thought was the problem, and we just stepped back a little bit, thought about what we're in, looked at all the options, it would have taken us 5 minutes and no money versus a lot of time and money. Yeah, so that's one of my favorite failures because
you learn from it.
There was a lesson, and I got to teach that son about working on cars, and yeah, so it was good.
Well, I like that story a lot. Well, Kevin, I appreciate your time today, and thank you.
You're welcome. It's nice to be here. Have a good day.